People, I declare this meeting as the hearing of the submissions for the Hood Aerodrome Aeronautical Charges Review open. Has anybody got a conflict of interest? Sweet. Councillor Vaya and Craig is going to go and sit over here. Anybody else? Thank you. Any apologies? No apologies, but we do have Robin online and we've got Ellen also online. There's no public forum, no late items, no confirmation of minutes, no committee reports. So we go right to the reports for decision on page 6. And this is the Hood Aerodrome Aeronautical Charges Review. And Madge, would you like to take us through that report?
Kia ora, good afternoon, Your Worship, Councillors. I will take the report as read, so you will see that through the consultation process we received 31 submissions, well thought out submissions. Today we are hearing from 17 submitters, 16 in person and I think 1 online. So I would encourage us to head into the hearings, if that's okay. Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Kaz? No questions, thank you so much. Right, we'll get straight into the submissions. If I could ask Bill Dittmer if he could take the stand, take the table, please. Bill, if you could just sit over here in front of us. Thank you so much. Just for the sake of the submitters, you get, at the moment, it's down, you get 7 minutes to speak and 3 minutes for us to ask questions. I'm going to be a little bit, with the time, I'll play around with it a wee bit. I mean, obviously some of these submissions are pretty extensive and we want to give you the time to get your submissions across. So we'll do that. You are being live streamed, Bill, and really you can take it for granted that, and I know everybody has read the submissions, and so over to you really to present your submission to us. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, when do we get a chance to ask questions?
This is not the meeting for, and it's a good question you asked there actually, not this meeting for you asking questions, Bill. This is for you to present. We ask questions, and one of the, for me it's always a bit of a bugbear of hearings is that we're not even allowed to make comments here, so we can't be seen to support anybody or whatever. All we can do is ask questions. So that's the way the hearings work.
So today you're telling us what you want to do, but we're not allowed to ask a question.
That's true, yes. It's just the way the hearing works for all council.
A little one-sided, isn't it?
Well, that's the local government, the way it works. So Bill, over to you for your submission. As I say, you've got 7 minutes or maybe a little bit longer.
Okay, well, everybody knows who I am. I'm not here ready to support my submission in full text of it because I've written it in and you know what I've said. I want to just get straight on to the fact that the aerodrome has been poorly mismanaged for the last 20 years or so. The costs have not been controlled in any way whatsoever. Enormous amounts of money has been spent, and I'd like any councillor here to tell me what financial benefit has been derived from it. Nobody can. I've got the records for 20 years. I've kept every document that council's presented. It's so involved, 7 minutes wouldn't even look like covering it. We've had presentations, plans, you name it. All of the bloody enormous costs. Beck Carter are the only buggers that made anything out of it. Most of them, or 90% of them, have been incomplete, not even completed. We've had a situation where we've put a sound zone around the aerodrome, then council issued permits for people to build there. Things like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I think it's come to a time where we've got to question the administration of the drone, financially and administrative-wise. And I see no point in talking about landing charges or whatever at this stage. We want a plan that will ensure us some income. Now, as far as the council's concerned, they've got it on the books at a crazy figure of a capital investment. What it comes down to, council have got a paddock, a runway and a set of lights. That's all they've got. But somehow or another they've got an enormous value on it. The enormous value, of course, is created because nobody controls costs when it's getting done. It's pay, 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 pay. No questions. Half the councillors, over a period of time, I really quite honestly think they wouldn't even know we had an aerodrome. I think it's the poorest example of management that I've ever seen. And it's reached the stage now where today it's critical, financially critical. And instead of worrying about landing charges and things, we should be getting a group together planning how the hell we're going to get out of the mess you're in. Because I can't see council doing it. Okay, so that's probably all I really want to say.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. Bill, is there any questions for Bill? Councillor Goodwin.
Over the last many years, there's been a hood users group.
Yes.
Which is supposed to give us feedback.
Yes.
From the users to this council. You're suggesting that that process has not worked at all.
It got hoodwinked. It was working well in the early stages.
When?
And it got hoodwinked.
When?
Oh, I haven't got dates and times.
Roughly.
Oh, probably 4 or 5 years ago or more. Perhaps more. We ended up with a situation where we were just a voiceless image. Council should have been coming to the Hood Aerodrome Users Group and asking what's needed and what he proposed we should be doing and planning around the suggestions from the users. There's nobody knows better than a user what's required. I don't want to insinuate too much, but half you councillors sitting here today wouldn't even know how to run a bloody aerodrome if you were asked to.
Thank you, Bill. I'll just make the point that we are here to discuss the aeronautical charges review, really, and our questions as well, to remember that. Thank you so much, Bill. Bill, if I could just mention, I should have before, we deliberate on June the 4th, and when you say we're not allowed to ask you questions, we're all taking notes and whatever you've said here will be deliberated on the 4th. So it's not as if we're dismissing what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom.
Sorry, have you got a question, Tom?
Yeah.
Sorry, Bill. Tom's got a question.
Sorry, I thought the time was up. Bill, I'm just sort of wondering, going forward from here, what do you see, are the next steps in terms of this advisory group and how you might work with council and for what purpose in particular?
Well, I think the first thing we've got to do is stop the spending, because everything, all the costs, your balance sheet doesn't mean a goddamn thing. It's based on what you've spent. And what you've spent wastefully. You've got nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing. So therefore, to answer your question, we need to stop in our tracks, decide whether we're going to form a group to do it, or whether the council is going to sort a few out to do it, because the situation's been the dog's wagging the bloody tail of the... It's just ridiculous.
Thank you, Bill.
Your balance sheet, is all based on what you've spent. But what you've spent is crazy for what you've got.
Can you give an example of some of those expenditures?
Well, you got $10 million from the bloody government the other day, falsely, because you never had a plan prepared, you never had a shovel-ready job there, council come along and offered you the money. What did you do? You rushed in overnight, built up a plan. That's the sort of mismanagement we've had all the way through.
Thank you so much,
Bill.
Bill.
Put down to bloody falsely representing the thing.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you, Bill. Okay, Greg. Hi, Greg, you heard the rules. Welcome to this meeting, and we'll just let you go for it.
Thank you for the time to appreciate being able to provide some comment on the proposed landing fee submission. Just by way of background, Greg Tetzlaff, I've been travelling from Wellington to Hood Aerodrome for the last 13 years. Recently moved over this way. In 2013 I purchased a hangar, or built a hangar, and had basically been here flying regularly since that time. I'm a member of the Aero Club, the Flying Tigers. I was a volunteer on the Wings board and had been involved in the last 4 or so Wings, and as I say, now living in the Wairarapa. I'm quite passionate about flying and the Hood Aerodrome, so that's just a little bit of background on where I come from. Essentially, and I don't think you'll get any objections from most, the need for landing fees does need to increase. The concept of one size fits all is in my view not correct. Fundamentally there's some subtleties amongst the landing fees, or how the landing fees should be derived, and it's quite different between general recreational users and commercial users. Commercial users have the opportunity to pass on costs and factor them into their operational costs and the costs of what they're charging their potential clients. Recreational users primarily are either retirees or people who have taken up a passion. They have limited funds. You might say it's a rich man's game. It's an expensive game. And there's a lot of layers to that expense, and fundamentally fees pays a part. It's not the most expensive aspect of it, but it is an expense. And pilots expect to pay. There's no doubt about that. The problem with the concept of the landing fees as they're proposed is that you'll actually decrease the usage at the airfield. People will stop using it on the basis they have a finite amount of resources, and they will only fly within those resources. And if you're adding additional costs, even in a per flight basis, essentially like if you're doing training, and the proposal is that you might do 5 circuits and then get another landing fee, or every time you take off and land on the same day you get another landing fee, it discourages that flying. Effectively, you don't want to add that additional cost. So, and the other thing is there are other airfields around here that you could vacate to from Hood and do your practices or otherwise, and Papawai is just down the road. And of course, from my own point of view, I chose to come to the Wairarapa to fly, driving from Wellington for over a decade, because it was the most, it had the best airspace, it was the most cost-effective option for me to learn to fly and to fly in this environment. It gave me a lot of options, over and above going to Paraparaumu or Wellington. Now, increasing fees the wrong way will mean those people like myself who do not live here or do not live in the Wairarapa and fly out of Hood will probably choose to go somewhere closer to home. And that would be a pity and would actually reduce the amount of flying out of Hood. Those that currently own lease hangar space, there's an incentive at the moment to invest here. And having seen the amount of investment that's gone on, and I am, for one, support the investment that's gone on, it's providing opportunities for people like myself to purchase hangar space or build hangars or rent space or however it might, lease space. And things like landing fees make that decision, I might question that decision if I don't live here. I might not build a hangar because it's actually going to cost me more to fly out of here. I might as well pay a little bit extra and fly somewhere closer to home like Paraparaumu or Wellington. So I think it's really important that the asset that is Hood, and it is a regional asset, not a local asset, for emergency purposes. If we have a natural disaster, we're going to have people potentially staged out of here, out of the Wairarapa if Paraparaumu not available, and that's likely as well. It's right in the tsunami zone if there's an earthquake or otherwise. So you want that regional asset to encourage people to invest in it, and of course if you want your return on your investment, then you need it utilised. And at the moment, in my view, it's underutilised significantly. However, the infrastructure is there and has been put in place to increase that utilisation. So encourage people to invest here. Don't discourage them. So setting the right landing fee the right way, that's reasonable, affordable, fair and comparable to other airfields, and depends on where you get your information as to whether the comparison is accurate or not in the study recently done. There's arguments on both sides. We are not yet a commercial airfield that is generating a lot of income commercially. It's predominantly a recreational airfield that is putting infrastructure in place for commercial purposes and future-proofing it. Let's not charge the people who use it, who are fundamentally recreational users, the cost or try to get the return on the investment from them. The return should come from the future users, the commercial operators, and a better model that encapsulates all the revenue streams that are potentially available for that aerodrome. And I would suggest there are other revenue streams yet to be explored, that could be explored. And it comes to my sort of last point, is that it needs a good business model holistically around how you can generate revenue from Hood Aerodrome that benefits all users. And that means consulting with all users and asking the smart people that are in the room, how do we go about doing that benefits all? There perhaps has not been that engagement sufficiently enough where you use the expertise in the room. People outside of the region don't always know better. So I'd advise use the resources that you have. And that's probably summarises what I was going to say.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much. Questions for Greg? Councillor Lena?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I'm sort of interested in I've read all these submissions, but kind of easy to forget who says what around the best way to target landing fees. What's your thinking on that?
So I think from a recreational user, an annual fee is the way to go, because they're the residents. There's a benefit to them to reside there, to build there, to invest there. Transient users who come and go, they wouldn't come and go very often unless they're a commercial operator. So you might see them every couple of months in good weather, or maybe during the season they might fly in a couple of times a month or something like that. So they'd be happy to pay the going rate on a per landing fee basis. But the people that occupy there, and who live there, reside there and fly out of there, they kind of need a bit of stability. And if we look at the structure here, my fees would go from something $150 a year, which is pretty cheap, to $1,200 a year based on what I flew last year. Now, that's getting a bit stiff, if you like. It's not encouraging me to want to go, actually I want to build a hangar and I want to invest here and I want to stay here because I like the place and I enjoy flying out of here. And I think so there needs to be that balance, and a single fee for the users kind of provides that. You know what to expect. You could do an arbitrary double the price and get a better return, or you can make it based on your previous annual flying. And some have a model, and there's a few examples around the traps that would give you that model, which would be a fair representation. You get a benefit for flying more, as opposed to being penalised for flying more. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a quick sort of, oh yeah, we'll just do that. It's something that needs the consultation from the individuals who fly here to come up with a working model. But to remove that single fee would be a mistake, and it should stay, in my opinion.
Councillor Goodwin, was it? Yep.
You said it's currently underutilised, and I think you acknowledged that in recent years the fees have been very cheap compared with anyone else. So I'm just curious about the connection between landing fees, ours being the cheapest and utilisation being low, and usage.
Yeah, I think it's just a hangover from the locals. I mean, up until recently, when I first got here over a decade ago, the Hood Aerodrome was like this. No one knew about it. It was very, very. It was off the radar. Trying to get to build a hangar was nigh on impossible to try and get a site out of the then management structure that looked after Hood. It was like there was no interest in Hood Aerodrome, and I'm sure that the fee thing is a hangover from effectively it's gone under the radar until very recently when you start looking at the value of lands and saying, well, you've got a massive asset there that's not returning much of an investment if you look at it from a commercial point of view. So I think, landing fees in terms of encouragement, but there's a lot of, it's that balance around encouraging people to invest or discouraging them. There's a lot of interest around, but there's been a lot of roadblocks to building hangars or investing in hangars here until recently. It was very difficult to actually do it, and there'd be people in the room here who've tried in the past and actually not been able to do it. They've indicated they've had the money, they wanted the land and the site, and yet, for whatever reason, the sites were not released.
Are those roadblocks gone now?
Well, they're going, definitely going, and I think there's a lot more interest in encouraging investment, but you've got to get the model right. Those sites, there's 30-odd sites that are being developed currently as we speak, which will be available towards the end of the year. And there's already expressions of interest, as I understand, in 4 or 5 of those sites. Now, they're all outside this area. They don't reside here. Well, there may be one that I know of, but the rest of them, talking fast jets and things like that, quite exciting for the opportunity to grow the Hood Aerodrome. You've got to be very careful you're not going to discourage that, in my view.
Councillor Tutor.
Thank you very much. Would you, you suggested you had other models of investment. What would you just name a few?
Well, just the one that springs to mind is that just about every commercial airfield that is reasonably large and starting to generate revenue charges an overnight parking fee for aircraft. That doesn't exist at Hood. I'm not saying that we should, but that's another revenue stream opportunity. It might not be a huge amount, but you encourage people to stay. Having hangar homes available as lease sites where people can invest in and live at the aerodrome. Basically utilising the land better. There's quite a lot of land. Obviously, you do not want to restrict the actual operations, but there's a balance, I think. And I think that balance can be found in discussion with the Hood user group. I view that I think the Hood user group is functional. I think it is representative of the community, and the interest is there if there's going to be the belief that we will have the ear of those that we need to have the ear of. That's the same as the safety group, which I'll talk about shortly, is that is a smaller representation with a safety focus, and there's interest in obviously having and creating a safe environment on behalf of all users, and that includes the council. So, yeah.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, hi, thanks for your report. You mentioned that the removal of the annual landing fee will greatly affect people like the Vintage Aviation and also the Aero Club. Can you just summarise that for everyone around the table?
Yeah, so there's specialised groups, and I mean, like the Vintage Aviator is an absolute example of, it is unique and one of a kind in the world. And a lot of people don't appreciate that they are here based on the decision of one man and his passion for flying. Now, at the moment they pay an annual fee. If you look at their movements of 70 odd flights in a weekend, during an aviation weekend where that's 70 a day I believe, and there's 6 weekends a year, their fee based on the landing fee would go from I think about $1,500 or something that they pay now to $12,500, and that is not going to encourage that individual to invest in further hangars, which he's just done, invested in a 50 by 50 hangar lease site and has other sites, and potentially move another 20, 30 aeroplanes into this location to make it double the size that it is, and absolutely the biggest and unique, the most unique collection of World War I aircraft anywhere in the world. That's got to be a draw card for the aviation enthusiasts around the world, and it's something that should be promoted as a for-hood aerodrome, as something worthy of encouraging, interest in and encouraging them to stay. They have a sister site or a site where they could go in at Omaka, and with our own principle, I would suggest that person might just up sticks and leave, and that would be a loss.
And also, obviously, could it pose a safety risk too for people like the Aero Club if they're worrying about their per landing fees when they're trying to train new pilots?
That's a yes, and that's my next submission on behalf of the safety group, but I'm going to cover those points.
I agree. Just want to come back. You sort of talked a little bit about the collaboration between the users group and council. What needs to happen there to make that work more effectively?
Well, with the safety group we have, and I'll talk about that in a bit.
The user group.
Yeah, but I think the model of the safety group needs to apply to the user group, which we do have now more input from council at the user group, so that there are members of council at the user group answering questions, listening to what the users are saying and understanding what the issues are that are around the users. And you've got to be clear around the subject differentiation between safety and the user issues themselves, because they are two different areas and often can conflict in terms of the outputs or the interests of the people that are in the room, sort of thing. So I think it's improved a lot, and it can continue to improve. It's just open communication, collaboration, understanding. Feedback I've had is that part of this process, the council and the councillors have become more informed about what actually goes on at Hood. Now that's a great thing, but it kind of took something like this for that to happen, and it shouldn't. It should already be well known that you have this asset and you understand its opportunity, the opportunity for it to grow and the value that it brings to the region. It's not just a bunch of rich guys running around in aeroplanes having a great time.
Thank you so much, Greg. Greg, we'll move you on then to the Hood Safety Advisory Group. You're doing a presentation for them as well?
Yeah. I might just have a quick half a glass of water. So, I'm a volunteer on the safety group, and I'm currently the safety group chair. I think most of you have read the safety group submission and know more or less the makeup of the safety group. It's a representative of a small, it's designed to represent each area of user within Hood Aerodrome. So there's representatives from basically commercial operations, recreational users, training establishments, the Vintage Aviator, the Model Aero Club, parachuting, basically right across section. But it is a small group, and of course council has 2 members on that safety group. And it's basically Hood Aerodrome is now operating a safety management system to support safety at the aerodrome and that safety management system is owned by the council. They are the owner of the asset, and therefore they are principally responsible for safety at the aerodrome, but they're not in relation to air operations, basically in relation to the asset. So in my day job, I'm a health and safety consultant. So basically the difficulty is by delineating between where responsibility sits. And the council doesn't own responsibility for air operations, that is the users. That a pilot in command is responsible for safety in the air, and those organisations who have those pilots are responsible for those individuals. And never the twain shall meet. There's crossover, but the council doesn't own that risk above the ground. So the safety group was established as part of the safety management system to collaborate on all matters of safety and provide council with advice on matters of safety, so that they have an informed and make informed decisions. They are informed. So that's the background to that. And you'll find most larger or mid-sized airfields around the country are starting to put out have safety groups. The proposed charges basically do impact safety in the sense that fundamental risk in flying is where areas are congested, like the circuit, which is the area above the runway. And you have aircraft coming and going regularly in that space. And there is rules around how you enter and leave that space. But fundamentally, there are still pinch points and risk areas where there is the potential for collision, and we've had that happen in the past with pretty dire consequences. The way you avoid that type of thing is practice. Practice, 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 and more practice. And also good communication and a whole bunch of other bits and bobs. But anything that's going to potentially encourage or discourage people to actually actively practice is going to increase the risk. And effectively things like a missed approach charge, the concept of charging you if you come into land and then you decide to go around, which is, from a flying point of view, is an absolute safety thing that you consider when there's something in the runway or you're too close to an aircraft that's landing or whatever. You'll do a thing called a go around, where you'll just apply on the power and go back around the circuit and come back and land again. Now the implication of these charges is you get charged for that. Now that's just not ideal, given that somebody might, in that moment that they have to make that split-second decision, decide whether they should go around or whether they're going to land, might decide that I'm not going to pay another fee. I'm just going to land. I'm just going to make it work. And you might say that's silly, but things like that happen. And we would not like to encourage that by having things like a missed approach being charged an extra fee. Again, charges per landing tend to increase the cost. So again, if we're looking at ab initio pilots or trainee pilots who are going out and practicing circuits at the aerodrome, going around and around and around and around in circles for hours on end, then the charge of the fee was that they were going to get an extra charge after 5 circuits. And I mean, so that just means that I'm not going to pay another $20 on top of the already $370 an hour I'm paying, just so I can do an extra 5 circuits. So I'll stop. So therefore, in that flight, I'm limiting myself to, say, a 40-minute flight instead of maybe doing another 2 or 3 circuits, which gives me that little bit extra practice and skill. And every time I do that, that's a cost. If I go out in the same day with the proposed landing fee, I get another fee on top of. Whereas most recreational aerodromes around the country, they charge you for one landing fee each day, regardless of how many times you take off and land. That's the people that absolutely reside and fly in that space. If you look at, well, what about people coming and going here? Very rarely do people come here from, say, another place and do touch and goes, maybe the Air Force, but most of them just come here and land and go and visit the Aero Club or whatever, and then off they go. So that landing fee charge would discourage the practice and therefore increase the risk. Quickly. Yeah, they're just, we've also had people, the payment process that has been indicated that would happen, charging fees based on radio calls. Not a great idea, because effectively not everybody has a radio at Hood. All the vintage aviator stuff is no radio, so effectively you can't pick up their charge and their landing fee anyway. And we have anecdotal evidence of people who don't make radio calls because they don't want to pay a fee. That means you don't know where they are. And that's not a good thing when you're flying into a circuit with 4 or 5 aircraft. You don't know where other aircraft are. You're looking out the window, you might think, well, no, there's something out there or whatever, you just don't know. You rely on those radio calls to give yourself situational awareness so you can make your decisions and decisions safely. So anything that's going to discourage people to not make radio calls, i.e. increase fees, not a good thing. And I think I've sort of summarised some of these
Right, Greg, well, we've got some questions for you.
main points.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Hey, many submitters, and including yourself, have talked about the AIM system.
Yep.
And it's quite an expensive system to operate. But nobody has said that there's anything elsewhere being used that they would recommend. Is there?
I'm probably not the one to answer that. Is anyone?
I
can't recall. I think, I mean, there's the whole point of having an annual fee means you remove the whole necessity for that. And effectively you get charged a fee based on your air movements previously.
Yeah, but you still got to monitor the transient.
Yeah, well, that's right. So you would still hear those people. Hopefully they would use those the radio. I mean, the avoidance side of it is the people who reside here, I would say. Rarely would it be outliers, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean, there's not a perfect system. It's an honesty system, let's face it. And look, it's about generating a culture of safety as well. And we've got a bit of work to do around encouraging people to do the right thing, the right way, that reduces the risk to other pilots. And because there are people who fly who feel that, you know, it's within the rules, so I'll fly that way. That's not always the safest way. So I think part of this whole exercise is educating people to see the value of doing the right thing. So it reduces risk and encourages them to do things like make radio calls and fly with good airmanship.
Thank you.
Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, my question was about AIMS too. I just wondered, could you describe how it works briefly?
Yeah, well, as I not been an expert on it, all I understand is that it picks up your radio call and logs it as your registration and so on for each time you're on approach or you make a call, and it's derived from there whether you're landing or taking off, and that's recorded somewhere.
So it picks up your registration?
Yeah, well, when you make a radio call, you usually you have to make it with your aircraft registration. So effectively, you make yourself, you identify yourself. But there are other ways, I mean, of identifying aircraft. If they've got ADSB, which is the GPS-generated tracking which you get on some of those apps. Basically, you can see aircraft in and around Hood, but not everybody has that. For example, the T-valve aircraft don't have it at this point, but that is a consideration for the aircraft in the future, for the very reason we need to identify where they are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg, for your 2 submissions. And we're deliberating, as I said before, on June the 4th, so keep in touch.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bevan. Hi Bevan, you know you've heard for over 7 minutes and you're live streamed and you'll be asked questions. Go for it.
That's fantastic. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Bevan Jews, and I'm here on behalf of Legend Aviation, which I run with my...
Just speak up a wee bit, Bevan, if you don't mind.
I'll start again. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bevan Jews, and I'm here on behalf of Legend Aviation, which I run with my fiancée, Lucy Newell. I'm a beekeeper by trade, and Lucy works as a pilot in Indonesia, which has unfortunately prevented her from being here today. Legend Aviation is something that we run in our spare time purely out of passion. Caring for old aeroplanes is incredibly expensive, and we offer flights to help subsidise the cost of maintaining them. But more than that, we genuinely love caring for and preserving these machines. One of our Tiger Moths had been unairworthy for 24 years before we restored it, and our Harvard hadn't flown for 65 years. We now have a second Harvard project underway which hasn't flown for 18 years. For us, keeping the history alive, that's about keeping the history alive. We pour nearly all of our time and money into these aircraft. None of it would be possible without being able to share them with the public through flight experiences. We're concerned that if the proposed fees go ahead, the increased costs will start to damage the viability of what we're doing. We submitted a detailed written statement, but I just want to highlight a few key points. First, we agree that landing fees at Hood need reviewing, but what's currently being proposed feels rushed, unbalanced and unaffordable to many of us. These fees don't reflect the level of service being provided and risk pushing more people away at the very time when Hood should be growing. Second, the public have been misled by the figures that have been presented. The claim that users only contribute 8% of Hood costs is based solely on landing fees. It excludes hangar leases, bailage, drag strip income and other user contributions. When you include those, users actually contribute closer to 36% based on your own financial records. That claim has completely undermined public perception. A recent article in the Wairarapa Times Age repeated that 8% figure and incorrectly stated that it includes both landing fees and hangar leases. It doesn't. This figure refers to landing fees alone, yet it's been used in consultation and in the media in ways that paints users as barely contributing. This is not just inaccurate, it's unfair and damaging to the users. Now users are being asked to cover a funding shortfall caused by major infrastructure and certification decisions that local users didn't ask for and don't directly benefit from. We don't believe that the 60% user pays target is unachievable, but it won't come from raising landing fees alone. The best way to reach this goal is to lease out the many new hangar sites and support growth in the aviation community at Hood. The Wairarapa offers fantastic flying, and if the council backs its own growth by making development straightforward and affordable, more users will come. With more locally based aircraft, more movements and more engagement, the user contribution will naturally increase without the need to drive away the people that are creating it. Remember, Hood isn't just an airfield, it's part of our emergency response network. It supports life flight, search and rescue operations and is also the home of the TVAL collection, which brings visitors to Masterton and keeps historic aircraft flying. It is also a space the public enjoys. Families come to watch the aeroplanes, attend events like the open day, and we should be building on that, not making it harder for people to be involved. We're incredibly lucky at Hood to have such a dedicated community of people who are willing to step up and save the council money wherever we can, as we did when we came together to repaint the runway. Our submission also includes a breakdown of landing fees across New Zealand. Hood's proposed landing fees are significantly higher than other comparable airfields, even some larger and towered airfields with air traffic control and flight information services. Hood doesn't have these services and is not busy enough to justify them, not to mention that introducing services like this would likely ground World War I aircraft which cannot operate with radios. We also highlighted some outliers, like Te Anau. That airfield has lost more than 20 aircraft in the last 10 to 15 years due to high fees and poor management. It now charges the highest uncontrolled airfield fee in the comparison, and is not a model that we should be looking to follow. Instead, we're asking the council to retain the annual fee structure at a fair rate, perhaps double the current level, while a more balanced and long-term model is developed. We also recommend keeping the itinerant fees stable, as they already align with national averages. Increasing this risks reducing the traffic to the airfield, which could ultimately lead to underutilisation of critical services like our fuel pumps, potentially to an unsustainable level. Above all, we urge the Council to work with users, not against them. The Hood Aerodrome Master Plan talks about attracting more aviation activity and growing the airfield's role in the community. That's something we all want, but that vision won't be achieved if the environment feels punitive and uncertain. We love this place, and many of us have spent years volunteering, maintaining and investing in the aerodrome. We want to keep doing that, and we want to see it develop into a true community asset. But we need a fee structure that supports growth and not shut it down. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bevan. Right, questions for Bevan? Councillor Helena?
Thank you, Bevan. You talk about the need to develop Hood and bring in incomes that way instead of perhaps penalising pilots. What do you see as the sort of unique aspects of Hood compared to other aerodromes and the potential possibilities of bringing in that extra income?
So, obviously, over the last 10 years or so, there hasn't been much development, and as was pointed out earlier, it's been just basically roadblocked. But now we do have the opportunity to have more lease sites. So I believe there's about 15 or so current lease sites, and another 28 are being opened up. Unfortunately, the part of the project that has been shelved because of lack of money is probably the part of the project that would have been the first one to have been filled up, the sites that had access to grass taxiways.
Why has that been shelved, sorry?
Because the budget ran out of money for extending the road, which was rather unfortunate. But yeah, the new proposed lease sites will significantly increase the revenue. I believe in the last financial report that 160,000 came in from the current lease sites. So that's the massive portion of the annual budget. So if we can increase that, that's where your money's going to come from, not from a couple of landing fees, which the AIM system that was touched on earlier, I believe that's $580 a month, and it costs 83 cents a minute for someone to listen to those radio calls and go through and record it to put it out. So from the information that we've had, it was actually less than 50% return for the council on those fees. So having the annual fee, it's guaranteed income, and if we doubled the base fee, we would be in a much better position. But at the end of the day, landing fees are small fry compared to the other income for the airfield.
In terms of future growth for the airfield,
and
what's unique there that might be attractive to aviation?
So our airspace, we're uncontrolled airspace up to 9,500 feet all the way through the Wairarapa, which is really quite unique in the fact that we're so close to Wellington. Paraparam, who knows how long that'll last. That's in the hands of developers and potentially may close. We're the closest sort of regional aerodrome to Wellington in that respect, which puts us in a big catchment. As Greg said, he travelled over the hill for a number of years, and it's not uncommon for people to be able to do that. We've got
So aviation industries
we've got,
you're running.
Yeah, so we maintain our vintage aeroplanes. It's the biggest collection in the world that we've got there of World War I aeroplanes. What we offer, we're the only place in New Zealand that you can go for a fly in two tiger moths side by side. It's totally unique what we can offer, and we bring people from all over the world that come flying. We've got people coming from Canada this weekend, which they're bringing money into the community. That's all sorts of things.
Any further questions for Bevan? No further questions. Thank you, Bevan. And we deliberate on the fourth. Okay, we come to the Wairarapa Aero Club. Keith McClure. And is it, oh, you can introduce yourselves anyway, guys. And
Thank you.
7 minutes, 3 minutes for questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Kia ora tātou katoa. Your Worship, Councillors, Chief Executive and staff, my name is Richard Hadley. I'm the recently appointed Chairman of the Wairarapa Aero Club, and I have with me today Mr. Keith McClure, who knows much more about the detailed running of the club to help me out. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'll cover some aspects of the club, and Keith will cover the fees proposal that we have. Your Worship, I have a paper that I'd like to hand out, if I may. Someone said they would hand it out.
Yep.
Cheers, thank you. We understand that fair fees must be set to meet your commercial imperatives, and we support such an increase, but we do note with some caution. We are not a business, and we do not have commercial margins. We're a volunteer organisation, nearly 100 years old, have 150 members, and over the years managed many ups and downs financially, but with great community spirit. I know no better way, Your Worship, to get you to understand something of our business than to hand out this page that you're receiving. It will outline for you where our revenue comes to. Our revenue is of the order of 200 to 250,000. It's not huge, we're a small club. And you also note that costs usually come to about that level. And if you turn over the page to the final year, the final page, you'll see that we have made losses in 3 of the last 4 years. So from a financial perspective, we are very watchful, because we believe that the club is financially vulnerable. But we do contribute to the airport beyond fees and do business right across other businesses at the airport. So in order to be totally transparent, you have a copy. As best we can present our financial position and the business that we do. The losses were made up by, in part, reserves, but also the generosity of members. 2005 was a better year, but costs in aviation are fast growing. So as I said earlier, we have a note of caution as we look forward to the increasing costs that the Council is anticipating. But we do, though, accept an increase is both inevitable and warranted under the situation, and our proposal will be outlined by Keith. But as I said, we are watchful, Your Worship, as to the impact that it will have on the wonderful opportunity that our community has through the Wairarapa Aero Club.
Thank you. Keith McClure is my name. I am serving, or have served, on the committee for some years, currently assisting as secretary. We have prepared a detailed submission which has been circulated, and the detail of that I just want to speak to and amplify a few points. As Bevan, the previous submitter, has pointed out, we have a number of unique advantages in the Wairarapa with Hood Aerodrome, and I think those should be celebrated, they should be cherished, they should be recognised and should be understood. Unrestricted aerospace up to 9,500 feet. All of these things are simply something we should not take for granted, and we all, I would hope, and Council in particular, should be seeing Hood Aerodrome as the asset it is. It's a critical piece of infrastructure. It needs to be supported by Council because, as some submitters have said, people who are looking to come and develop and build, they have choice and they have options. And a number of people have chosen to go to fielding, just for example, rather than come here for a variety of reasons. But back to here, the Wairarapa Aero Club is a training organisation as well as a club, and as a training organisation it has special features which we submit are deserving of special consideration. We're not looking for a handout, and we simply want to pay what is fair and equitable in terms of landing charges. But make no mistake, a one-size-fits-all with the abolition of prepaid annual fees is a step backwards in our view. For the club, what we ask is that our special training role and position be recognised, and that there be the opportunity to negotiate a fair and equitable bulk fee, and we would prefer a collaborative, consultative process rather than being presented with the proposal that we have, which is going to add a significant financial burden. Now, you could say, well, if you want to go flying, that's part of the cost, and you simply have to stump up. And that is one view of it, but we think that is short-sighted and unfair. And as I say, we're not asking for anything untoward. And in the paper, we have pointed out that a comparable charge at fielding would be $2.75 plus GST if you're going on a per landing basis. What we say is that whatever is arrived at has to be commercially justified. This is not the forum to conduct such a negotiation. We have put a proposal in our paper. What we would ask is the opportunity to sit down with council, and whatever we do, it must be inclusive of all touch and goes or missed approaches. So a full stop landing, a one fee. So in conclusion, thank you for your time, thank you for listening. Would you please take on board the points we have made? And as for the collection charges, the difficulty of collecting that information is pointed out with the inconsistency between the council data and what our flight records show in terms of flight movements. Thank you.
Right, any questions? Becky?
Yeah, okay, thank you. On the number of flights that you've recorded, I'd just quite like to get an idea. You've got 828 flights. What sort of number of training or pilots would that represent? Like in a 12-month period, if someone's training to fly, how many landings would they do?
Well, it's impossible to say, it's not separately recorded, but what you can say is if you're on a training exercise with Jewel, you would expect to do any number of touch and goes, because that, after all, is the critical safety aspect. So, for example, if I'm going for a flight renewal, I might go and do 5 or 6, or 2 or 3 with a check with an instructor, and then you would go and do a number. But it's not separately recorded.
No, but in this new proposal, they will be charged for each one of those as opposed to the annual fee regime.
Well, correct, and that's why we're saying it would be a far simpler method, easier for the operator and easier for council if there was a bulk fee.
But also too, would you say that it's unfair because you're penalising people that you're training?
Well, I don't wish to characterise it one way or the other.
Yeah.
It is simply adding another cost to what is a discretionary spending, and the impact on safety in the last 2 submitters, I can only just repeat what they've said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Helena?
Yeah, thank you, Richard and Keith. Keith, you referred to you prefer a collaborative decision-making process with council. Just briefly, what would that look like for you?
Well, what we'd like is an opportunity to sit down with the data we've got with the council, financial people, and arrive at a fair fee.
Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Richard and Keith. Do you know, with the advice that we got given, would you be happy to sit down with the person that we got significant advice from in regards to this fee structure?
We'll talk to anyone.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Richard and Keith. And we'll deliberate on June the 4th. Thanks for coming along. Okay, John McMullen of the Hood Users Group. Hi, John. You got around 7 minutes, 3 minutes for questions.
Mayor Caffel, Deputy Mayor Johnson, other councillors, thank you for the time today to speak to you. I've taken as the fact that you've noted that you will have read these reports. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in mine. I represent the Hood Users Group, which is a CAA-defined collection of airfield users, the purpose of which is to all those people and the airfield owner, whoever that might be, to get together and discuss things. So my submission is from a very high level. As I noted, others in the room today will be giving more specifics on suggestions on what may or may not be done. So I'll quickly just run through my submission, not in a lot of detail, but just pointing some pertinent points. I would strongly suggest that if you walked out on the street today and asked any ratepayer on the street, are you happy to pay an increase and would you be happy with doubling your current rate, they'd all say yes, not. The meeting that we held at HUG a couple of weeks ago, the users were all absolutely unanimous. They were happy to pay more, and in fact they'd pay double and wouldn't complain. You will not get that from any other group. That goes to show how onside your user base is with the facility that you own and operate and the cost of operating it. The yearly fees being discussed by others, and I won't touch any more on that really, other than there was, as I said, those in the room at the time were quite happy to pay double what they're paying now immediately without any further discussion, but then obviously more discussion to come after that about long-term charging regimes. I'm not going to go to things that others have already touched on. There was one thing, obviously, the regime of charging based on weight. One could argue that, yes, that's a fair way to charge, and it probably is to some degree, but one set of users, specifically the agricultural aircraft, will actually be penalised quite heavily by that method. If they're charged on their all-up weight, you're charging the equivalent of a 40-tonne truck every time it takes off at 40 tonnes, when in actual fact it literally will never take off or land at Hood with 40 tonnes. It will probably more than likely be landing with the equivalent of, say, 20-tonne weight. Those agricultural aircraft operate out of airfield just as a take-off and landing spot. All their offload of their weight capability is taken on-site, on farm strips, etc. So that's just one example of, as noted by the Aero Club, one size doesn't fit all, and the agricultural aircraft would be quite severely punished in that respect. Safety has already been discussed. The 60-40 split is another area that was discussed, and again has been mentioned here today. I understand the council has to set some sort of split across every one of its assets. I think what needs to be shared more readily with the public, and has been noted in reports, is you have to look on the airfield to some degree as an insurance policy. Now, none of us in this room like paying insurance. Every year when you pay $600 you go, well, I got nothing for my $600. But one day you're going to want $600,000 back when your house burns down. And in this case, it's when a natural disaster hits this region. When a natural disaster hits this region and both road accesses are closed, the rail tunnel is closed, we don't have a port. The only way to get bulk goods into this region would be via an airfield, and probably the Air Force with their Hercules. I'm sure the residents then will be quite happy to say, I don't care how much you spend on the airfield, I'm getting diesel, fuel, water, whatever it might be. I think the council needs to view this asset in a slightly different vein, and to some degree as an insurance policy, and unfortunately you have to pay money that you're not getting in return each year for your insurance policy. The process, as noted earlier too, was a little bit out of left field from everybody. The first anyone knew about this was when the document was basically presented, saying here's your submissions, here's your proposal, get on with your submissions. The HUG group, as I've mentioned, is a group that's designed to work in hand with the council or the airfield owner, and we would have hoped or wished that the council had rather come to the HUG group separately first and just discuss what you wanted to do. As we said, there's no discussion about an increase needs to happen. We could have sat down, actually saved the council quite considerable sum of money, I would assume, on what's been paid on a consultant to work out what other airfields are charging. A little side note on that, I was playing with ChatGPT and some other AI tools this morning. You can get listings of other airfield charges within seconds by typing it into ChatGPT. You don't need to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars to consultants to do a Google search for you. We're still willing as the group for the council to come and talk to us, to sit down and do this collaboratively and cooperatively. As I said, you have a unanimous group who are not anti an increase. It's just the amount of the increase and how it was presented that has probably caused some discomfort and disquiet, should I say. Oh, and the other thing, yes, on my note, I'm sorry, I'm just reading this as I go. I'm always well prepared, not. There was a document that was produced by the council back last year, the 2024 airfield landing fees review. I know that that wasn't released with the submission. I think in actual fact that worked against you. It was obtained via an Official Information Act request, a Lagoima. There was nothing in that I've read that was anti your case. It probably would have been good for that information to go out rather than the 3-page or 4-page very short summary that was received. It would have given some background for the council to provide to the users. I would have suggested that you might have sent that out with the proposal, but never mind, such as it. The proposal document, I've got a section at the end. All I'll say about that is it's a bit of feedback on the document itself. Given this morning's newspaper article about things at the council and the Auditor General, I would hope in future that your document control and what have you is a lot better than this document was, because as you probably well know, with court cases and insurance payouts and what have you, not that I know the details, obviously document control is something that can become very expensive and very important if a process is ever challenged. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your submission. Questions? Must have been perfect, John.
I don't know.
Thank you so much.
That's good. I can go back home and go back to work now before I get in trouble. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, Jacinda with the Hood Hanger Company Limited. Hi Jacinda, you know the process, I'll just let you go.
Kia ora, councillors and staff. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak today. No doubt it's been a journey wading through all 140 pages of submissions, so hopefully that gives you some idea of how much passion and commitment is invested in our small but mighty aerodrome community, and by default, how much knowledge, industry experience and potential allied support you have sitting in this collective. Yes, I am the nerd behind the graphs and reviewing 20 years of financial reports and the consulting package, but I do like to think that I'm a strategic nerd and I like me some evidence-based decision making. So what this data really shows us is that we have a multi-generational issue now that has snowballed into the situation we find ourselves in today. We're in a period of 6 years, our operating costs have increased 5-fold to over $1 million per annum to operate the same size surface area, runway, same staff and same facilities. A recent OAA suggests that up to 40% of this amount is in consultant and legal fees. Significant changes are required to curb this trend. The consultation document does consider one side of this coin, how to levy users towards 60% of this ever-increasing figure. However, what it doesn't consider is the flip side of that coin, which is how to increase revenue overall for the benefit of all parties. I appreciate my submission is large, so today I'm just going to focus on 2 of those areas. The first is safety, a subject close to the heart of all aviators. We are all united on fostering a safe and thriving environment for everyone. In recent years, the Council have taken numerous steps in the name of safety or to reduce their liability. This has included closing a runway, bringing in a safety group, introducing new protocols, and of course certification. All of this regulates the surface area, but not the air column itself. The airspace across the whole of Wairarapa is Class G, uncontrolled, up to 9,500 feet. It is not mandatory to fit, let alone use, an aviation radio or a transponder under civil aviation law. This means it is ultimately the aircraft captain's responsibility to see and avoid. Situational awareness is what pilots call it, the ability to interpret multiple streams of data, all in 3 dimensions. A radio is a critical safety tool for building a traffic picture, communicating your position and intent, or indeed calling for help. We need to encourage consistent use of the radio at all costs and not introduce measures that penalise it. As you've heard today, pilots need to fly regularly to maintain those skill sets, particularly in handling of emergencies. This includes things like training for missed approaches and engine failures, but also things for other configurations such as loss of power, bird strikes, landing gear malfunctions, fumes in cockpit, and a myriad of other situations. Under your proposed changes, these will now incur individualised charging, even if the training profile doesn't make contact with the surface. Now, this potentially encourages skill fade and inadequate training regimes, creating quite the liability for the airport operator. Think of your teenager learning to drive. Are they better equipped if they learn on an open, straight road with no traffic? Or do they need to experience wet and metalled roads, poor weather conditions, heavy traffic flow and distractions? Much like on our roads, better equipped pilots make a safer flying environment for everyone. For this reason, I strongly advocate that you keep the annualised fee with an increase of 200 or even 300%, thereby keeping Masterton an open and safe airspace environment for all, along with some big income gains. The second area that I'd like to address is pathways to increase overall revenue. The value of aerodromes, as John suggested for insurance, is that they exist.
not necessarily that councils run them. Considering a private lease, a CCO or a joint venture are all models to consider to curb future rates increases. I also recommend that you establish a small advisory group made up of local aviation professionals who will give their time and expertise freely to support the council in these developments. I also recommend that you employ a business attraction and development lead to identify and secure future tenants for Hood. The purpose of this role is to ensure that ratepayers get a return on their investment and to bridge the ballooning gap between the user base and your OPEX. I recommend you present at the annual Aerospace Conference in Christchurch, marketing how Masterton Airport is open for business and how you will support industry to relocate and navigate the consent process to set up shop at Hood. I encourage you all to read the report released by MB earlier this month, an economic assessment of the advanced aviation sector in New Zealand. As of this financial year, it's now worth $2.6 billion, and Minister Collins has just committed to doubling that by 2030 with dedicated investments in R&D, expanded CAA regulation and workforce upskilling. I'm sad to say that other regions are already well ahead of us. Northland is home to Merlin Labs, flight testing autonomous software for the Cessna Caravan and defence applications. Bay of Plenty is home to Sios Aero and Envirotech, manufacturing and trialling unmanned rotary aircraft and autonomous predator control. Gisborne's home to Rocket Lab, manufacturing and launching satellites for a global audience, making New Zealand now the third largest provider of launches worldwide. Hawke's Bay is now certified as an international airport, bringing in wine tourists from Australia and Hawaii. They're also the headquarters for Ocean Flyer, an $800 million venture for a wing and ground aircraft for coastal transport. Sea trials are now underway. Canterbury's home to the Tāwhaki National Aerospace Centre, a joint venture with local iwi. Boeing, Kia, Wisk, Swoop Aero and Piper Vision have signed an MOU with the government, now driving industry growth and international investment in aviation in New Zealand. Dawn Aerospace launches their Aurora, a remotely piloted aircraft which has a 4-hour turnaround time to launch satellites into the stratosphere. Even little old Timaru have got on the bandwagon with certifying for autonomous agri-drone testing. I would argue that expanding MDC's vision and thinking beyond hangars and airlines to the potential for new jobs, income and investment is the way to go. We are strategically located next to our capital city. We have great weather patterns, affordable living, underutilised and uncontrolled airspace up to 9,500 feet with military radar coverage above and military test areas off the coast. I appreciate now that you're all on short finals to the next local election, and before that, signing off on your annual plan. But I think there's still enough time to set the ball in motion this term, giving our whole region the ability to get a return on that $1 million a year ratepayer spend. I suspect I'm now out of time, but if you're interested and you'd like to continue this conversation, please join me tomorrow night at the Air Club. I'm supporting a local company to give a presentation looking for investors for a product to run flight trials out of Masterton. You're all most welcome, 6:30 tomorrow night at the Air Club, 217 South Road, Solway. Ngā mihi, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jacinda. We won't charge you for that advertisement. Any questions? Councillor Lena.
Yeah, I love the innovative approach that you're thinking for the Hood. It is a question, Mr Mayor, sorry. Couple of questions though. What are you promoting tomorrow in terms of flight trials? What does that mean?
In terms of flight trials, so we've got a company that you'll hear from very shortly, who originate from Masterton, building a next-gen composite aircraft, and they've come to Wairarapa to offer a seed investment opportunity as they'd like the Wairarapa community to adopt this project as part of the investment schedule, specifically.
Still don't really understand, but and I won't be here tomorrow night, but I'll find out. Thank you. But the second question, Jacinda, you talked about radios, and is it your view that all aircraft should be carrying a radio as a safety mechanism?
It's not my view. At the moment, that depends on the category of airspace that's classed by CAA, and we're Class G. So what that means is that you're not required by law to fit a radio, but I would say that we want to do everything we can to encourage those who aren't fitted to consider it. And that doesn't have to be an expensive avionics exercise. That can be a retrofitted handheld that you plug into your helmet as well.
Any further questions?
Thank you for taking the initiative, if it's your initiative for tomorrow night. That's the sort of
Thank you
stuff
so
we
much.
want to facilitate.
Thank you so much, Jacinda.
Thanks, Tim.
We deliberate on the 4th and we'll keep in touch. Okay, Peter Ricks. Hi, Peter.
G'day.
You've heard all the rules, Peter. I won't repeat them.
Yes, thank you.
Just go for it.
Thank you, Worship and Councillors, for giving us the opportunity here to have some input. My name is Peter Ricks. My association with the airfields first started in about 1979. I got a pilot's licence here. 2012, I bought a little microlight aircraft and started flying it here. And since then, another 1,500 hours in my logbook. I instructed on a voluntary basis with the Aero Club. And over a period of a few years, I built an aircraft which I finished last year, flying that a lot. And I'm a shareholder in a jointly owned hangar at the airfield. Right. Everyone here agrees there's a need to increase revenue in the airfield and utilisation, at the same time preserving and increasing the levels of safety we've got. But I think most of the submitters think that the current proposal won't achieve those aims. We've got a shallow and pretty fragile user base. Our analysis shows that there's 4 users, recreational pilots, that make up 20% of the landings. We've only got 6 full-time working equivalents working on the airfield. That's a very shallow pool. When you've got 6 people working in the airfield and that amount there, right? Nothing in the proposal really incentivises others to come here. And the proposed charges are, some might say, they're higher than national standards. Just a little bit on financials, right? I'm kind of identifying the problem here, but rest assured I will move on from there. The bulk fees, as we know, were set in the last 2 weight categories in 2011, and they were 80 plus GST and 160 plus GST. Reserve Bank CPI, the same period from then to now, is 39%, which is 111 and 222 plus GST. Problem is, in the same period, as has been pointed out by Jacinda, operating expenditure has gone up like 5 or 6 times, right? And until about 2015, OPEX and airfield income matched. We've got the same user base since then, but we've had all these large infrastructure increases and so on and so forth, right? And all this is on annual movement numbers are a fraction of other airfields. And you've got to invite the councillors to ask themselves, reflect, was a bit on how we got ourselves into that situation on a movement basis, a fraction of other airfields. Anyway, going back to CPI, no one thinks an increase in line with CPI is appropriate. None of us think that, right? So we wouldn't be asking for that. A lot of others have talked about how moving from to per landing fees will impact safety. I'm not going to talk about that. But what it won't do is it won't encourage the users to come here, let alone residents to fly more. We want more utilisation. The aviation market in the country is a fixed size, it's growing at whatever percentage. We're trying to take market share from somewhere else. How do we pinch that market share from somewhere else is a question for those making decisions have to ask themselves. That shallow user base, while Ashford and they went to 28% drop in landing fees, they went from a bulk to a per landing. If the others have pointed out, if we lose the avgas, that's a disaster. It really is a disaster. Resident aircraft already contribute significantly through hangar lease, whether you're an owner or paying to a landlord, you're already contributing. So you could make an argument that residents pay more. If the landing charges are all equal on per landing, residents already pay more because of that contribution. So there's the problems, but I think there's solutions. And here, I believe, is a chance for the council to be innovative in their approach. And hopefully you've read my little submission there, and I've kind of melded a system in there which I believe brings some of the best parts from various perspectives of a bulk fee and per use charge, right? And that's all my numbers are in there in the tables that in my submission, so I'm not going to go through that, right? I believe that system would make about a 250 to 300% increase over what we're paying now. Has other advantages, right? It's likely to encourage flying. Recreational and commercial at the same rate, but commercial end up paying more because of the frequency of operations. The heavier category pay proportionally more, the heaviest in my three categories there, because they're more likely to be commercial, thus revenue earning. And if they're not revenue earning, they're more likely to be corporate aircraft, which are part of a larger business enterprise. So even though they're Part 91 private flying, they're still part of a corporate, if you want. The model incentivises users to pay more. Like a lot of things in life, there's a slight reduction in cost as you buy more. You buy more, your per unit cost goes down, but you're still increasing turnover, and it's important to make that turnover comes at no cost to the supplier of that service. There's no extra cost, but the turnover increases. And what's more, that it doesn't impede the ability of any other user to use it, because we've got a fund all intents and purposes an infinite amount of capacity there. We're nowhere near capacity, right? And just as a sideline, my costs under this model that I think is worth consideration would go to approximately $500 per year, because I'm a relatively high user in that recreational category. So I'd be paying a lot more, and I'd be paying a lot more on some of the proposed bulk fees. So it's kind of not my super self-interest to propose this, but I think it's a good model. Option will remain for resident aircraft to pay per use. They will remain the same. Add a single landing fee of $9, $15 and $30 to maintain relativity with those resident fees as I've outlined there. And here, I think the heavier category should pay more than what was proposed by Council. And the reason for that is, if I come in here and I'm in a $10 million King Air that costs $3,000 to operate, and I pay $70, that's a drop in the bucket compared to mate with just got a $7,000 microlight that's paying $9 to land, and the thing runs at $40 an hour. You know, it's a price of a used car. So it might be equal on a weight basis, but it's not equitable. Equitable and equal are two very different things, I think. And these large and complex aircraft are pretty infrequent visitors, but they're the main beneficiary from all the money the council has spent, by far and away. The local operators, well, yeah, it's nice to have all the big hard stands and runways and lights and the rest of it, and the IFR approaches. They don't use it. Even if domiciled here, the corporate aircraft, well, corporate aircraft coming here aren't going to make you any money, because they'll come here once in a blue moon, drop their $100 or whatever for landing, whatever, then bugger off. The only way to make money out of corporate aircraft is they're domiciled here, paying leases for a dirty great hangar there, because a corporate aircraft that launches out and flies once every 3 weeks pays $70, big deal. A lot of microlights are spending a lot more money than that. Yeah, so I think there's a chance for council here to be innovative, increase income substantially, but also not disincentivise people that have already fly here and are thinking of coming here. So that's kind of a summary of my submission, councillors and worship.
Thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate that. Any questions for Peter? No questions, Peter. Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as I say, we'll be deliberating on the 4th, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Michelle from Viella Limited. Hi, Michelle. You've been watching on and know what the rules are. Just go for it.
Okay. I'm just going to read my submission because I'm not great at public speaking. User fees at Hood are not just made up of landing fees. The contributions we make to the airfield revenue include our land leases. The total contribution is currently 36% of the total expenditure and 46% if you exclude the depreciation component. The revenue includes 9% from landing fees, and a third of that is from the annual fees. Considering Hood Aerodrome as a strategic asset for Masterton and the Wairarapa, this is a pretty significant contribution. Users with land leases also pay rates that go to the General Council Rates Fund over and above our Hood contributions. Hood is a lifeline for the air ambulance flight service, headquarters for the Wairarapa Search and Rescue, and is invaluable in the event of a civil defence emergency in the Wairarapa or Wellington. Hood users are those with aircraft businesses, clubs that are domiciled in Masterton, in owned or rented hangars, transient aircraft making full-stop landings, aircraft undertaking instrument and missed approaches, and those using Hood as a fuel stop. The users include private individuals, companies, clubs, flight schools, flight search and rescue, and more. As users, we recognise the landing fees have not been reviewed for some time and are going to be increased. The current proposal shows the removal of the annual landing fee currently available to individual aircraft domiciled at Hood. This accounts for 30% of the current landing fee revenue. The annual fee is invoiced at the beginning of the financial year, which means the council collects the money up front. It is administratively simple as the aircraft movements during the year do not require any invoicing or follow-up. It's also worth considering the annual fee could be made available to non-domiciled private aircraft as another revenue source. The landing fees could be doubled and would still be an acceptable fee with a biannual review going forward. This review frequency is already in place for land leases on the airfield. Transient landing fees could be increased 50% this coming year with a biannual review if not only applied to non-domiciled aircraft. There is no flat fee structure that fairly accounts for the different aircraft operations at Hood. The proposed structure penalises those aircraft based at Hood who currently pay the annual fee. With the current development of new hangar sites being well underway, an excessive increase in landing fees may deter potential new users and may result in current users considering a move to other airfields. Those aircraft using Hood as a fuel stop may choose to go elsewhere. This could result in the fuel company removing the pumps if they're not financially viable. I would request that you reconsider the annual landing fee option at Hood Aerodrome, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions for Michelle? Okay, Michelle, thank you so much. Okay, councillors, we're going to take a break for 5 minutes or so. Just from the people here, that may seem a bit strange, but we've been actually sitting here since 9 o'clock this morning. So some of us, particularly Okay, we'll resume the meeting. You will notice that Councillor Nelson is not here. He's not feeling well. He's gone home and said that he will join on Teams. So our next submitter is Tom Williams from the Wairarapa Flying Tigers and Wairarapa Helicopters. Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
You know the rules as well. You've been here, Tom, so you just go for it.
I note the clock's strategically placed for my benefit.
I don't worry too much about the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unlike my colleague, Mr. Dittmer, I'm not well known to all of you, and on that basis I'd like to introduce myself and read my submission. I was a flying member of the Wairarapa Ruahine Era Club from 1957. I was chairman of the Masterton County Council from 1979 to 1984, and in this capacity I was involved in the initial planning of the 0624 sealed runway. I was involved in the funding of the sealed runway that was undertaken by the combined Wairarapa regional authorities, South Wairarapa, Carterton, Masterton, both urban and rural. So the first comment I'd like to make, Mr. Chairman, is that Hood Aerodrome is a regional authority, and some of the points that I will make clearly have been made before, and I guess that simply emphasises the fact that we are pretty passionate about some of these things, not the least of which is safety. A regional authority, and should be treated as such and funded on a regional basis. Everyone in the Wairarapa benefits from Hood Aerodrome. In the case of an emergency in the southern North Island, Hood Aerodrome will play a critical role for emergency services, which lends weight to the regional funding model. I have copies of the long-term plan for both the, and I don't say they're necessarily up to date, but they are dated through to 2028. The copies of the long-term plans for both the Wellington Regional Council and the Masterton District Council, and as far as I can see, there is no mention of Hood Aerodrome at all. And I note in the video of your recent extraordinary council meeting agenda, Mr. Chairman, that you are supportive of a regional funding model. So I would urge this council to engage with the other Wairarapa regional councils to regard Hood Aerodrome as a regional amenity and help fund it. The precedent has already been set. Along with a couple of friends, I started the Sport and Vintage Aviation Society in 1975, and we ran our first air show in 1976. We started Wings over Wairarapa in 1999, and I was the air show director for Wings from 1999 to 2015. We changed the Sport and Vintage name to Wairarapa Flying Tigers a few years ago to better reflect what we do and where we did it. I represent Wairarapa Flying Tigers on the New Zealand Aviation Federation for the past 20 years. So it's fair to say I've had a lifelong interest and involvement in aviation here in the Wairarapa. Now my thoughts on the proposed landing fees. Today I represent Wairarapa Flying Tigers and as a director of Wairarapa Helicopters. An increased landing fee is certainly justified, and aircraft owners and users at Hood Aerodrome would not object to an increase. However, the Council's proposed level and suggested increase is unreasonable. And could I support a comment from the Wairarapa Flying Tigers President, Stephen Davies Howard, in his submission on safety? And he says, let me get this right. As a voluntary organisation, the Society would not be able to pass on the proposed charge of $18.98 per landing to our member trainees, nor is the Society in a financial position to absorb that cost. The proposal as tabled would therefore likely make our operation not viable, and New Zealand would lose a pathway into the preservation of the skills required to operate and display warbird aircraft. Comparisons on landing fees with other aerodromes are irrelevant in my view. We should be concentrating on the actual costs of running Hood Aerodrome. There would be support for a small group of Hood users to work with Council on financial and development issues to better understand these running costs and support Council's objective of running the aerodrome efficiently and effectively. The precedent has already been set with the existing Safety Committee. An example of my financial concern would be when the Council hired a consultant from the West Coast to give advice when largely that advice is available here at no cost from the locals. Paying another agency to monitor radio calls and on-charge the Masterton District Council for potentially 50% of the revenue generated by landing fees is, in my opinion, poor business, and that's been referred to a couple of times. For the permanent aircraft owners based at Hood Aerodrome, our annual charge is most definitely the preferred method of payment for landing charges, and an annual charge minimises council executive time. And again, I refer to your extraordinary meeting and the sixth bullet point under context. Fee collection should be simple. It should be easy to recover charges. This comment supports the annual charge, which could then more simply be more simple than an annual charge. There's also the matter of Nordo aircraft who are likely to use the aerodrome facilities at no charge, and if the landing charge is perceived to be unreasonable, landing aircraft could adopt Nordo landing procedures in the attempt to avoid payment. With both the organisations I represent, individual aircraft hours are required to be furnished to the Civil Aviation Authority annually. So in the case of recreational and Tiger Moth training flights, it's possible to estimate takeoff and landings reasonably accurately. And again, I quote from our Chairman's submission, the Society operates 3 vintage aircraft at Hood Aerodrome and trains pilot in the skills required to fly, operate and display these aircraft under the auspices of the New Zealand Warbirds Association. We are therefore a significant user of the aerodrome with circa 150 takeoff and landings a year. In the case of helicopters, they land, refuel and depart without any damage to the aerodrome whatsoever. So to charge helicopters a landing fee based on weight is manifestly unjust relative to the damage they do to the aircraft surface. And again, I quote from your extraordinary meeting, Mr. Chairman, where the cost structure should reflect this, where you say heavier aircraft create more wear and tear. The cost structure should reflect this, and in that respect, I'd submit that helicopters maintain very little damage, if any, at all. I'm not advocating that helicopters should be exempt from paying landing fees, but I am suggesting there is a case for helicopters to be rated at the same rate as the microlight aircraft. 2 concluding comments. Firstly, from the Wairarapa Flying Tigers President, Stephen Davies Howard, who is in Wellington on Transport Accident Investigation Commission business today. His closing comment is one that both he and I would recommend as for serious consideration. And he says, and I quote, "The next point is a general one regarding safety and not specific to the Society's operation at Hood. There is a risk that the proposed policy acts as a perverse incentive, encouraging aircraft owners to save money by conducting practice approaches into paddocks on private land rather than the aerodrome. For an inexperienced pilot who needs the most exposure to repeated takeoffs and landings, this course of action is particularly dangerous. An inexperienced pilot is not aware of the many hazards they would face in this scenario, and there is real potential for a fatality to occur off aerodrome. Consolidation of skills at a well-founded aerodrome like Hood is far safer. and he urges the elected members to take this latter point seriously as part of the responsibility for the community as the aerodrome operator. And to my point, so in my concluding comment, Hood Aerodrome has lagged behind most other aerodromes in New Zealand because of its lack of forward planning and the provision of hangar sites and more strategically placed fuel facilities. Consequently, an ability to attract other aviation-related business has been lost. This situation is a disincentive to new aviation-related businesses and new aircraft owners to come to Hood Aerodrome. It will be interesting to see the proposed new development rectifies this situation. I thank Council for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you so much, Tom, for your submission. Councillor Johnson, question.
Hi Tom, thank you. Just a question and a point on your comment about microlights and helicopters.
Yep.
You know how you said they should, your recommendation is that they have the same charge?
Yep.
However, there was talk earlier about microlights being recreational and helicopters being commercial, and therefore commercial people should pay more. What's your answer to that?
Well, I guess it depends on the base that you're promulgating your fees. If it's damage to the aerodrome, which is something which you refer to in the minutes of your meeting here, where heavier aircraft do more damage and should be charged more, then I would accept that there's an issue there that I would disagree with. Commercial helicopters are very much part and parcel of the fabric of this region. They do all sorts of tasks, not the least of which is search and rescue and particularly firefighting and other ancillary opportunities. So it's a question of whether you put the weighting on something which is commercial vis-a-vis something which is recreational. And for me, I wouldn't draw the distinction, but that's my view.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Tushar, then Councillor Holmes.
Thank you for your
Comment.
You spoke about regional, and I just want to know where you reside.
I reside at Wainui in the Masterton District Council's area.
That's all. Thank you.
That's quite simple.
Tom, I was just going to ask you, who picks the cost up with search and rescue helicopters when they land? Who picks that cost up?
Mainly the civil purse. Having said that, there was an occasion recently when an individual fell into the surf at Riversdale. He worked for a company. The company boss called Wairapa Helicopters. We went out there and did the search and didn't find him that evening. Found him the next morning, and an application to recompense us for the cost of that helicopter flight was turned down. So that was something you put down to, I guess, your civic duty.
Because ACC pay for life flight, don't they?
Beg pardon?
ACC pay for life flight planes.
Yes, they do. I mean, well, as far as I know, they do. I haven't had the privilege.
No.
Councillor Johnson.
Just another question too. You and some of the other submitters have talked about a Hood advisory group.
Yep.
And yet we've got the Hood user group and we've got the Hood safety group.
Yep.
Do you feel that the Hood user group is working well and would be sufficient to be that communication tool to council, or do you think something else additional is needed?
The Hood user group is a functional entity, and when the John McMullen does a very good job at chairing it and calls meetings, not regularly, but meetings as required, and it works well. The safety group is made up of 3 or 4, 5 members, and I would suggest that any interaction with the council and the Hood user group on matters as weighty as this would end up in a bun fight. So I think what I'm recommending is that, well, I'm suggesting is that that 4 or 5 of the Hood users form a small committee to interact between effectively the Hood user group and the council, because they will represent the views of the Hood user group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tudor.
With regard to the regional slant that you're talking about, could you tell me how many of the user group and how many of the safety group that you're on,
Yep.
how many of them, where they reside? Do they, is it divided up on wide? Or?
Well, I'm not on the safety group, and so Greg Tetstaff would be the man to ask that question of. But most of the Hood users reside in the Wairarapa. Definitely.
Okay, any further questions? No further questions. Thank you so much, Tom. We deliberate on June the 4th, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much. Apologies if I get this name wrong, but Lapo and Salofi. Lapo, thank you. Hope I got that right. The wine's starting to kick in, eh?
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about this issue about the Hood Aerodrome. And so, Mr. Chairman, my name is Lapo Ancelotti. I have a long association with Hood Aerodrome. I have an airplane that I keep here in Hood, and I've been around for long enough, to get involved with the community. And in my opinion, it's going to be pretty hard, to pay a landing fee, and every 10 landings, you're going to spend the same money that you now spend in a year. So no doubt that probably the landing fee will not be reviewed for a long time. So I think everybody will be happy to see some sort of increase in the landing fee, even double the landing fee, and see if that number of 40 movements per year would increase. Maintaining an annual landing fee could be also an incentive for the people fly more, maybe understanding the problem, of running cost at Hood, and review in a couple of years the number of movement and see what the revenue is. But say that, I believe that the big investment that the council made at Hood was instrumental for turning Hood in a kind of aviation industrial hub. I mean, attract, the investment justify, promoting Hood as a place where, we can attract business. And that was probably the revenue will be much more significant and than on a landing fee of few aeroplanes they are flying. And especially if the number of 14 movements a day would drop, the landing fee revenue will be pretty limited. I say we because I have a company called Aviation Composites, New Zealand, and we always saw Hood as with the potential of attracting business, be developed on the business side. And at the moment, we develop a new aircraft. We designed a new aircraft, which is a cargo aircraft, and we are planning to do the flight test at Hood, and that's what Jacinta mentioned. And I sent a comprehensive documentation to the council a couple of weeks ago to let you know what we are planning to do. And the reason why we want to, the aeroplane is going to be built in Auckland, and the prototype is going to be built in Auckland. But we want to run the flight test in Hood because it's strategically located. It's a perfect airport. It's got a bigger runway, new runways, wider. It has an uncontrolled, airspace. It's close to Wellington. It's midway through between Auckland and Christchurch, and it's a perfect place. And obviously, if we are going to, be able to do the test flight in Masterton, obviously we're going to attract also, international audience. We're going to invite people from overseas. There's going to be media. That's what I mean is as would be developed as an aviation industrial hub, or whatever you want to call. And probably it's interesting to know that about 10 years ago we proposed to create a composite center here at Hood. Composite material is carbon fiber, and that's sort of material. And because we proposed for another project, was replacing the Cresco, but that project didn't get off the ground for a number of reasons, but we didn't forget our vision of having Hood as a center, perfect, absolutely perfect center. You got the room, you got the space, you got the facilities, you got pretty much everything here for that. And last thing is that if we come here with a big project like that, of course, we are prepared to pay any landing fee that will be charged, and that will be part of the budget, and so we are talking about quite a big budget. But for an aero club, pay, $20 or whatever per landing fee will be probably different between keep going or just close down. And an aerodrome like Hood without an aero club is nothing. I mean, an aerodrome without aero club is not going to work, in my opinion. That's my view.
Thank you, Napa. Thank you so much. Any questions? David?
So you mentioned that the prototype's being developed in Auckland. Your idea is to possibly move the whole process down here.
The aeroplane, the prototype, we are on a farm. We are talking with investor at the moment. We have a 12 months construction time from scratch to the aeroplane ready for test flight. We are particularly quick for a number of reasons that it's going to be boring to tell you. But yes, we developed the prototype in Auckland because we don't have the composite facility here. But it is realistic to think that even if the composite is going to be made in Auckland, the assembly and the test flying program for each aircraft could happen in Masterton. I think it's going to be far more efficient than try to do that at Harbour, or we can't operate from North Shore because the runway is only 790 meters and is a 5 meters wide. And well up high is military, so we can't do that. And Harbour is so complicated. I developed another aircraft in Harbour many years ago, still in composite, and we did the test flight program in Harbour, but was a mission. It's very busy. Airspace around Harbour is quite complicated to deal with. And here we are very close to the South Tunnel. We are very close to everywhere.
Any further questions? No further questions. Thank you so much, Lapo.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, appreciate it. Okay.
By the way, we are presenting the project tomorrow night at the Aero Club as I just anticipated. So everyone is very, very welcome to come and see what we are doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, David Critchley from the Vintage Aviator Limited. Hi, David.
G'day, I get to sit down.
Yeah. David, you've got, I think you just come in, you've got 7 minutes and 3 minutes for questions.
I think I'll be quite quick.
Yeah. Just before you start, I'd recognise that Councillor Nelson is now on, or has been for a while on camera, and Robin, our iwi rep, he's been there all the time. So, okay, thank you.
Yep. So, thank you for letting me say this. So, I look after the Vintage Aviator aircraft. As you probably all know, they're the World War I aircraft that you see in the skies from time to time. So I look after the flying side of things and also the maintenance of them. So at the moment, we pay a lump sum for all the landings that we do at Hood. And I'm not here to quibble about how expenses are going up. I'm more trying to state that it's going to be very, very hard for you guys to actually quantify how many landings that we do, because our aircraft do not have radios. It's not that we don't want to put radios in them. We can't actually have radios in them because the motors, the electrical systems on the engine, the ignition system, they're not shielded, and you cannot have a radio that will function, and you cannot shield the electrical system on the engine. A lot of the engines spin round and round, and it's a logistical nightmare to be able to do anything with that. So it's not that we're trying to be cheap and not put radios in them, it's just that we physically can't. So at the moment you've got the AIM system, which is going to be the tool that you're going to use to charge for the landing fees. So unless we retain that annual fee, you're not going to get any money out of Vintage Aviator unless you come down and actually count the landings or come up with some other idea with us. So I just wanted to make you well aware of how the AIM system will not capture aircraft that come in without making radio calls. So the second thing is that I've put down here that I'm also worried about safety when we're flying. There's other safety concerns which are being addressed, but when we're flying we rely on itinerant aircraft coming in to actually integrate with what we're doing. So we have a ground radio and our pilots basically tell the person on the ground radio exactly where they're going, what they're doing, for how long, and so when there's an aircraft coming in from elsewhere, we've got all that information to be able to tell them. Now, if they're trying to come in without paying put landing fees, which I fear will happen if they go up too much, then we may lose that safety measure of actually being able to let them know what we're doing, because if they don't make any radio calls, we won't even know that they're coming. So that's another concern that I've got. And my last concern, at the moment we run all our aircraft on avgas, which is available at the field from BP. The people doing the fuel pumps lately have been telling me that BP have been removing fuel pumps from all around New Zealand, and the reason for that is avgas is sort of a product which isn't being used quite so much, and so they're not making so much money out of it, and so hence they are removing a lot of those facilities. Now, if we make the landing fees too much at Masterton for itinerant people coming in, or Masterton, like I've put in my thing here that I absolutely love Masterton, but it's not a destination. It's not where people are going to spend all their money. They're coming from Auckland on their way to Wanaka or whatever, and they're stopping here for fuel or to overnight. And I'd love Masterton to have more attractions and things that would make people want to stay here, but we've got to be realistic about what Masterton actually is, and we love it. But if people aren't coming and actually fueling up their plane, they're going elsewhere because it's cheaper for them to do so, or then we could potentially lose the fuel, and that would mean for myself, I'd have to, our trailer for the weekend of flying takes about 1,500 litres. I'd end up having to take that twice by road to another facility somewhere else if we ended up losing that. So that's one of my big fears, that we'll lose that BP avgas. So what I'm basically saying is I think we should retain the annual fee, and that we need to make the landing fees reasonable for everyone to come here. Like, I don't think it should be the top of the average price. I think it should be a reasonable price so that people think, oh yeah, that's fine, I'll just stop into Masterton. So that's all I have.
Thank you, David. Questions for David? Councillor Johnson.
Hi, David. Just a couple of questions. How many planes do you have domiciled here at present?
So at present, we have about 35 aircraft that we regularly fly. But as you've seen, we've made a new hangar, and we've got a lot more aircraft that could very easily be put together and would be running very soon, that are stored in our Wellington branch. And also we've got a whole lot more that we're currently working on. So in the long term, we could have as many as 70 aircraft.
Terrific. And one other question. You know, when you do your flying weekends,
Yeah.
how many landings or would you do over a weekend?
Yeah, on a good weekend, we would probably do 60, 70, something like that.
Yeah.
On a bad weekend, we'd probably do half that, depending on the weather. Like if the weather is no good, we wouldn't be doing
I just
much at all.
wanted to give everyone an idea of the activity.
Yeah, yep. So that's sort of, you know, where we're at, yeah,
Thank
at
you.
the moment, yeah.
Any further questions for David? David, thank you so much.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
And we deliberate on the 4th, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Mark Wilson. Hi, Mark.
Hello, how are you?
Over there.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Wilson. I am owner, chief engineer of 06 Aviation Hood Aerodrome. I am the resident maintenance guy. I've been based in Hood for 24 years. I've seen a lot come, a lot go. I've got over 40 years aviation experience, both civil and military. I generally do, because of my hangar location, I see a lot of what's going on, who's going in, who's going out. And today, so far, we've had 2 planes take off, and we've had 1 IFR approach from Massey. So we've only had 3 movements today, so it's a bit quiet. So regarding the fee change, or system change, proposed change, there's no denying from everybody on the aerodrome that it's got to change, it's got to go up. We've got to keep this airfield running. But to try to get back that 14 years of lost revenue, it's just not feasible. We've had a proposed system change or fee changes promoted to us, multiple different categories, and including on those categories are aircraft that physically can't actually land at Hood. So I don't know how that's actually going to work. But also there's one particular category that's missing is gliders. They are only built by the tow plane, but the aircraft itself is not actually built. They weigh over 600 kilos, which is the same weight as a microlight, but their footprint is through one little wheel, whereas every aircraft spread their load around. So glide does actually cause damage to the airfield. And also currently, as I say, I know who's flying and who's going in or out. We're on average working out there are 8 regular flyers on the aerodrome at the moment. 4 of those are microlight, 2 are adventure aviation, and 2 are light aircraft. So you're actually going to try and run an aerodrome with 8 aircraft, basically. It can't work. The proposed, what do you want to call it, fee on the go-around, you're actually trying to put a fee on safety. That's just totally and utterly wrong. It's totally irresponsible to be actually trying to do that. If you carry on doing that, as has been pointed out by other people, people will go elsewhere and they will practice elsewhere, which will bring them out of, that'll put them in more into harm's way. So what we need to actually do is reduce that and keep them actually at the aerodrome, because we don't want to have more drastic occurrences. I think it's the best way of doing it. So when it comes down to the airfield and actual daily use and what have you, we have, like last winter, we had 3 weeks when the grass runway was shut due to weather. Once again, no operations, nobody's flying. We have life flight coming in using the main seal, but your revenue goes down, so you've got minimal revenue. When we have the spring equinox, not a lot of people fly, lost revenue. We had the large southerly storm start of last month. Over those 3 days, we had 2 flights. So it's another 3 days of lost revenue. So how are we going to make up this shortfall? Hood's growing. Everybody notes it. The aviation industry notes it. I work around other aerodromes in lower North Island, and they notice runways, taxiways, hangars, etc. being developed. And it's commented on. But we've lost aviators previously when we had a big delay on getting the second phase of the hangar sites going. So we don't really want to lose more people. But one of my customers, who's based at Fielding, he came in and it's already got over to what is going on with landing fees. And those people are all talking that it's already being noted. So going to what other people have already said, we've got so much wealth and experience on this airfield. Set up a user group. We can utilise so many different people. We've got so much knowledge here. It's unbelievable. We can use all this data and push it through the safety group for developed plans. With all the knowledge we have, my workshop alone, we worked it out at Smako this morning, we've got 175 years of experience in my workshop alone, so I dread to think what else is on the airfield. The aerodrome, basically it gives so much to the region, it's always there as well if the region's in dire need or the capital. We need to encourage outside operators to return and also to bring in new events. Maybe consider some sort of special one-off block event fees. So currently we have the National Aerobatics Championships, glider competitions, RANS fly-ins. SAA are going to be having a fly-in here in February next year. That's approximately 40 aircraft mentioned at the moment. We have the ACT display team wanting to do practice events here. We have air shows, we have open days. And now potentially with LAPO as well. So we don't want to miss out on these people. So you see with these events they come through, but that also actually creates knock-on into the region with hotels, motels, food, etc., etc. But that would actually knock-on effect for myself, because you get 40 aircraft on the airfield, not everybody leaves. They do need assistance. So the likes of myself, we're here to help and assist. I've just agreed to take on an apprentice who's starting May next year. He's about to finish his diploma engineering training. I need to be able to push him through to create more engineers. But if we're not getting more flying, or the same amount of flying as we're doing, it's going to be a struggle to push this guy through on his way to being something good, because he is a good kid. And he'll go elsewhere. We don't want that. We want this place to grow, and if you push the fees too much, you'll push people away. So let's keep the status quo as it is, increase the fees, which nobody denies, review in a year's time and see where we're at. If we get an airline coming in 6 months, who knows? Review. Use that safety group to review. So, yes, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Questions for Mark? Mark, thank you so much.
Cool, thank you.
We'll be back on the 4th. Nicola Little. Hi, Nicola. Welcome.
Thank you. Kia ora, councillors. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to my submission. I'm Nicola. I'm co-owner of a microlight that lives at Hood that was built by my partner over 5 years with plain parts in every room in our house except the bathroom. Having finished it, we now fly a lot and our landing fee goes up by 900%. Everyone agrees that landing fees should go up here, and everybody wants a really lively, financially successful airfield. The proposal in front of us is one that will reduce traffic in the short term and choke future growth of small plane flying. You may know that in Ashburton, when they abolished the annual bulk fee at the end of financial year 22, landings dropped by 28% over the following year, and then the bulk fee was reintroduced the following year. Microlights, that's my proposal, just all about microlights, they're the only planes I understand. They are the future of recreational flying. At the moment, they are 33% of all powered planes in New Zealand. That's 1,210 of them, and they're the fastest growing category. That's out of airlines, freight, Air Force, everything. They have a huge range. They offer a huge range of price and performance. They can be extremely cheap. The last aircraft that was sold at Hood was sold about 2 months ago, and that was $6,000. It was a microlight, and it's a lovely long plane. They can also be incredibly expensive. You can build them yourself. You can maintain them yourself, obviously with oversight from people like Mark, and they run on 95 from Waitomo or Caltex. So this has brought a whole new wave of people into flying over the last 15 years who are flying lower cost planes and for whom cost means a lot. They're people that never dreamed they'd be able to fly until microlights really took off. Hood is actually a small plane airfield right now. 83% of your landings are small GE and microlight. You're also a low traffic airfield. Your consultant's report says there's 9,500 movements, including the touch and goes. Compare that with Wanaka at 50,000, Hastings at 40 to 60,000 and Oamaru at 40 to 60,000. Council says there are 60 small planes currently on the airfield now paying the annual fee. 37 of those are microlights, so that's your biggest category. This proposal will mean that your future landing revenue is going to rely very heavily on the Aero Club and 4 small plane flyers for the bulk of small plane landing fees. I've sat down with people's logbooks and with touch and goes, I think it's a good estimate that these 5 parties make up about 55% of all your landings at the moment and 66% of small plane landings. So pretty risky when you've heard that the Aero Club has run at a loss for 3 years out of the last 4, and any of the 4 individuals could move to be with grandkids, just decide to sell their plane or have a health issue that stops them flying. The proposal has a very drastic effect on the small group of regular flyers that Smart's talked about as well. Financially, these people already pay leases as well. These people are the people who are the bedrock of Hood's small plane flying community. And community really matters because as we're talking recreational flying, they're the people that lend tools and sit down with a newer pilot and help them plan their first foray across the Cook Strait in a really small plane. And they're building the culture that actually keeps people here and we hope will attract people here. Their non-financial contribution is extremely important to the flying future of Hood. And it doesn't cost the council any more whether one of their planes lands 1 time a month or 30. In addition, I actually strongly suspect that councillors have been given incomplete information in your landing fee comparison that is actually misleading. On this chart, which I'm pretty sure is the one you got, there's no column for microlights, even though they're your biggest category, and there's no mention of annual fees at all. So I called the equivalent small regional airports with SEAL in New Zealand, 21 of them, and 12 of the 21 do have annual fees or some other arrangement for domiciled aircraft. So it's a very common thing to do. But what really emerged for me in doing this is a very clear correlation between having no annual fee and very few or no small planes on your airfield. So with annual fees, for example, Fielding has got 90 small planes on their airfield, and I know you'll think that's private. Well, exactly, it's private. They actually have to make their airfield work financially, and they have an annual fee. Hastings has got 60 planes, Whakatane is 35, they're interesting, they want to keep it at about 40% of their landing numbers, but still increase it. Places with no annual fees, we have Oamaru, for instance, with 2 private planes and 1 Aero Club plane, because essentially they've handed their airfield to a company that trains Indian pilots for Indian Airlines, and they don't want other people around. Wanaka, with their 50,000 movements, has got 6 microlights, but I couldn't get the recreational GA numbers. And Twizel, which I thought might have plenty, actually has 2. And that was a very deliberate decision by the airfield management and council to not have an annual fee because they really want to concentrate on their commercial flying there. They've got a lot of commercial flying because what I hadn't thought of is they're right next to Mount Cook, so they have a huge amount of tourist flying. You've also got airfields on here where you talk to a tower, and that's a whole nother league. That's a very expensive league as well. So Marlborough here's on your list, that means Woodburn. Well, they have up to 20 airline passenger flights a day along with freight. The Air Force is based there, they've got commercial flying. They don't have any small planes, they don't want bug smashers in their airspace. But 8 k's down the road, you've got Omaka, which has got 50 hangars and about 75 planes and an annual fee. So this proposal is a risk to Hood's reputation. You need to be seen as flying friendly. For example, Whitianga has got a great reputation. Over the last 4 years, 40 hangars have been built there, and I'm told that that's people moving into the area because they want to fly. So my question for councillors is, are small planes actually part of your future mix? And I certainly hope they are. I think Hood has the ability to be a really unique mix of cool old stuff, really cool new stuff, commercial stuff, and hopefully small recreational planes as well. So my proposal is that we charge a one-off landing fee of $12, including touch and goes and GST, because that's the average of the small planes, small fields with seal on my list, and a $250 annual fee, including touch and goes and GST, and that would make it the second highest in the country, where you've just got one airfield, but we're all in this together, and we know that something needs to happen. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Nicola. Questions for Nicola? No questions, Nicola. Thank you so much for your presentation. Murray Callister. Hi, Murray.
Right, thank you all for...
you know the rules.
I'm just going to read my submission. Yes, I know the rules. As a long-time user of Hood Aerodrome, primarily operating my home-built light sport aircraft, I've witnessed and supported the aerodrome over the development over the years. However, the current proposal represents an unprecedented financial burden on small operators like myself. Under the current fee structure, my annual fee is $368, inclusive of GST, for the use of 2 aircraft. Based on my flight activity over the last year, I did 444 movements comprising of 111 full-stop landings and 333 touch and goes. The proposed rate of $18.98 per landing would increase the cost to $3,378.44 per year. This represents a staggering 818.6% increase. Such a dramatic rise is not only disproportionate, but it also is financially unsustainable for general enthusiasts. It is also important to note that the landing fee is just one part of my overall cost from operating at Hood. My current annual rent is $4,008.99, despite the fact that it does not include access to power, water, sewage or any utilities, and excludes the building itself when I paid to construct, consent and continue to maintain. The rent alone has doubled in the last 5 years. If the proposed landing fees are implemented, my total annual cost will rise to $7,387.44, an increase of $5,200, which is 237% compared to just 5 years ago. These rapid escalation in costs pose a significant threat to the viability of my continued use of Hood Aerodrome and the relative income to council. Comparison to other aerodromes. For context, several other council-owned aerodromes and local aerodromes offer far more reasonable fee structures. Fielding is annual fee of $316.25, Wakatani is $230, Dannevirke has no landing fees, Wairoa Matamata $160, Taupo costs $11.50 per landing, Tokoroa $250, Tākaka $375. Note all these include GST. These aerodromes have effectively generated income, whether directly or through alternative means, demonstrates that sustainability operations do not necessitate exorbitant fees. While I completely understand the necessity to periodically review an adjustment in fees, the proposed increase does not align with general aviation market values. The substantial infrastructure investment at Hood Aerodrome, including runway widening, resurfacing, are commendable. However, the development has had minimal impact on small aircraft owners like myself. Over the past decade, the Council has consistently impaired the growth of the development of Hood Aerodrome. Both individual users and Hood user groups have long advocated for the expansion of hangar development to facilitate the aerodrome's prosperity. However, these efforts have been hindered by the Council's evident reluctance to permit such development. Consequently, many individuals have turned to other aerodromes while operating costs continue to rise, an obvious lack of revenue to the Council. These decisions have now exacerbated the financial challenges faced by Council and are being turned back onto the community who advocate to avoid this in the first place. The underutilisation has led to a clear loss of potential revenue to the council. Now, with increased financial pressures, council propose to raise the fees beyond national norms and remove annual fee options will only further jeopardise the viability of the current users, potentially accelerating the aerodrome's decline. For context, 2024 movement figures show disparity clearly. Masterton Hood Aerodrome has 5,110 movements and a population of about 28,700, fielding 12,500 movements, 17,500 people. Wanganui, 60,700 movement, population about 49,000. Hastings, 40,000 movements. Omaka, 39 movements, excludes nearby Woodburn. An average number of movements across Fielding, Wanganui, Hastings and Omaka is a 744.6% increase over the Hood figures. This comparison highlights the missed opportunity for the economic activity and the community benefit in Masterton, as well as lost revenue to the council. The Hood Aerodrome is an exceptional asset for both users and non-users. It is an asset similar to the Aquatic Centre, library and sports fields. These facilities are available to use and contribute to our small town's life and community. To support the aerodrome's sustainability without disproportionately burdening users, I propose the following initiatives: organising revenue-generated events. Hosting events such as fly-ins, air shows, aviation expos could attract aviators and general income. Collaborate with local businesses, communities and other councils in the region could further support these initiatives. Hood users have been happy to volunteer their time and contribute to these types of events in the past. Improve billing efficiency. It is documented in the 2025-26 annual plan that the 2022-23 financial year landing fees generated were 22,372. Administration fees on this was 11,273, 50%. Implementing a more efficient billing system, a simple piece of software could ensure near full retention, something that I have raised before to no avail. Reassessment of the airport manager's role. I struggle to understand why Hood Aerodrome, with no commercial operators and with only 5,110 annual movements, require a full-time airport manager complete with vehicle. Bear with me. Alongside many of the small users, of Hood Aerodrome, I am the backbone of the council's asset. I myself have owned and operated aircraft for over 35 years from Hood. I feel the cost increase on small operators is unrealistic, unfair, coupled with the proposed 15.3% rates increase this year, plus a further rent review being presently undertaken. We are certainly feeling the financial burden. Alongside the matter at hand, I would also like to raise to the Council the schedule of an extraordinary meeting to discuss this matter, coupled with the minimum legal consulting period, raises concerns about the transparency and the thoughtlessness of the decision-making process. The timing of the consultation, set to conclude 28th of May, with the new rates being implemented on July the 1st, could potentially undermine genuine community input. The approach conveys a disregard for the concerns of the Masterton ratepayers who will ultimately fit the bill. I strongly urge the Council to reconsider the proposed fee structure and keep the fees annual for local users, as is common across the country, at a rate that is relative to the market. An annual cost of $3,378.44, as it would be in my case, is simply unprecedented and is $2,922.44 more than the most expensive annual fee I could find in New Zealand, being Te Kofi Air Park. A standard annual fee at a reasonable rate ensures certainty around charges for both councils and users. I implore you to explore more equitable solutions to support the sustainability of Hood without disproportionately burdening the users. If the new fees are implemented as proposed, I likely, along with many of the others, will be forced to re-evaluate my future at Hood. This would be a loss not just to myself, but to the Hood and the wider Masterton community that benefits from having a vibrant airfield. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Murray. Bex.
Hey, Murray. Just a question for clarification. You know how you mentioned the annual fees around the country at different airports?
Yes.
Were they per plane?
The annual fees, yes, those annual fees were directly relative to owner-operators on the field.
Because you know how we have a charge that it's per plane?
Yep, that's per plane, sorry, yes, that is correct.
I
That's
just
per-
wanted to clarify that, because
Yes.
yes, they do have annual fees, but they are considerably higher, but
Well, they're inclusive of GST. If you take the GST off, they're probably pretty relative, I think.
Anyway, I just wanted clarification, so thank you.
Any further questions for Murray? No further questions. Thank you so much, Murray. Thank you. No problem. We're deliberating on the 4th. Okay, we come now to Skydive Wellington, Martin Lloyd. Martin, he's not here. Okay, there's one online, which is Super Air Limited,
Are we on time?
but we're way ahead of time.
Martin Lloyd's just on
Pardon?
his way up.
He's on his way up.
Martin Lloyd's on his way up, okay.
Well, I might take that minute to sort myself out. It's not true. Thanks, David.
Do you want mine, babe? I'm charged up.
It's how much?
Do you want mine?
Weird. No, it might be.
PowerPoint? Yeah, mine's charged. Fully charged.
That's fine. I did keep PowerPoint. No, I just seen another.
Do you want to go to mine?
Oh, yeah, could I? Please, thanks.
Yeah, and really,
Yes, I'm charging.
Without where the forestry is. It's going to be right. That's where we run the
oh, totally. It doesn't matter.
Martin Lloyd. Martin, come on up. Thank you for coming in, Martin, and you've got 7 minutes to speak. We've got 3 minutes for questions.
Okay.
Just go for it.
I'll keep it very brief and very simple. I like things to be simple. I think all aircraft owners, registered owners, should be paying a base rate to operate off the aerodrome. We have a wonderful facility there, fabulous aerodrome. Most operators don't need the seal and all the things that an airline would use. Moving on to my next point, the grass needs to be cut, the fences need to be maintained, the place has to be operated from a financial point of view. That happens regardless of whether you do 2 flights a year or 100 flights a year. So I think it's important that everyone pays for that wonderful facility that's available to all of us who fly. That's basically all I have to say. So I said I'd keep it simple.
Fine. Right, we've got questions for Martin.
One more thing.
Yeah, okay.
Is from a bookkeeping point of view, from our side of it and the council's point of view, I think it's much simpler that one invoice is given to operators. How you decide what that invoice is or how much we pay, it's up to you people. From other people I've spoken with, we can accept that the rate will have to go up because it hasn't been increased for a number of years. So that's not the issue. Okay, far away.
Thank you. Questions for Martin? Brent.
You've mentioned others have mentioned the number of landings.
Yes.
Some people do 3 a year. I would imagine a thing like skydivers would be doing
Hopefully, yes.
dozens and dozens.
Yep.
So, do you think a commercial skydiving firm should be paying more?
More than the private owner, yes, I can accept that. But I think even the private owners should pay a base rate across the board and keep it simple. Yeah. The number of landings you do or the weight of the aircraft has nothing to do with the damage to the aerodrome. The grass has to be cut regardless. The place has to be upkept.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Martin. Thank you for coming in. And
All right.
we'll be deliberating on the report.
And thanks for the privilege of being able to be there and come and talk to you.
No,
Okay.
really good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our last one is Super Air Limited. Kent, we're on Teams. Not so sure. Harry, have you got on it?
Look at the moment. We'll give them a call and see.
Okay.
Yes, please, Harriet.
Could I just say, while that's going on, and particularly to the submitters, to thank you so much for the quality and the way that the submissions have been conducted today. It's been really excellent and given the councillors a hell of a lot of food for thought, so thank you so much. This is when you get the silence.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question this time?
No, sorry, not from the floor, Bill, not while we're in actual meeting, no, sorry. It's just not done.
He'll be online in a couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you. One of the things about hearings is that we have very particular rules and councillors get frustrated by them as well, very much so. We could blame our officers, of course.
Feel free.
Oh, hi Ken.
Good afternoon. How are you all?
Good, thank you. Just turn your noise up a little bit, if you can.
Is that better?
That's better. Kent, you've got 7 minutes to speak. We've got 3 minutes to ask questions. Just go for it.
Thank you very much for your time. I promise you I won't take 7 minutes. Really just wanting to jump on to give you good folk an opportunity to ask any questions in reference to my feedback on the proposal. As I've said, and take the document as read, Super Air is in support in large part of the review of aerodrome charges. Very well aware of the costs of operating in an aviation environment. They're only going one way, and unfortunately that is up. The key part we've raised in our submission is how the apportionment of landing fees has been put forward in the proposal document. It's a challenge that we have at a lot of aerodromes around the country. We're operating from 11 airfields across the North Island, and agricultural aircraft in particular operating with the maximum certified takeoff weight as the classification class. It becomes a very expensive exercise operating off airfields when in fact the aircraft are operating well below that by the nature of our operation. We're obviously based from the airfield and have been through Super Air and the predecessor company before Super Air from the Hood Aerodrome for a very, very long time. Fantastic facility and it's great to be part of the aviation community down there. But really just looking for some consideration as to how those fees are apportioned across the different weight category classes and how our aircraft and other agricultural operators are looking to be classified under the proposal document.
Okay, Ken, thank you very much. Yeah, Ken, we'll take some questions. Any questions for Ken?
I've got a question.
Yes, Councillor John.
Yeah. Ken, so what recommendation would you say for your aircraft then?
As I've said in the proposal, they're classed, all of our aircraft and all agricultural aircraft are classed under the classing system, probably one or two classes above the weight category that they operate off any given airfield from. So depending on which aircraft you're specifically talking about, I would recommend, or our preference would be the lowering, for the agricultural aircraft, lowering them by one weight class. Obviously we have in the past and still do at a lot of the airfields we operate from, pay a flat fee for the aircraft that are based there permanently and then pay per landing for any of our additional aircraft that come into support. And effectively I would ask the council give some consideration to how they have referenced the setting of the fees across those various weight classes when compared to the national average. There's quite a big variance in the benchmarking against the national averages for that pricing, and I would ask that consideration is given to a more consistent increase across the varying weight classes.
And just one more question, please. I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were looking at some further development at Hood Aerodrome. Is that the case?
Yes, we are. We've been in consultation with the council and other users around the building of a hangar facility to house our aircraft on the airfield for the last 3 years. Context for you folk, our industry's been through a reasonably tough time with the primary industry downturn, and as a result that has been on the back burner. We're looking to bring that project to the forefront again and recommence work on building a hangar from the airfield.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ken? Councillor Goodwin.
Can you give us an indication, if there is one, that, with your many years operating down here, I presume our charges are considerably less than some of the other airfields, 11 airfields you operate out from. Can you give us any comment on that comparative charging?
So are you talking about the historical charging or the proposed new charging? The historical charging is in line with the smaller uncontrolled facilities we operate at around the country, where we will pay fixed fees of anywhere between $500 and $3,000 for the local aircraft to operate from that airfield. We are obviously in consultation with a number of aerodromes as fees are being reviewed at any one given time. The proposed fees in the document probably fall more in line with aerodromes that are controlled, the likes of Rotorua, Hamilton, and Napier being other places we operate from.
Sorry, what does it cost you to operate it? What fees do you pay to Masterton?
I believe, and I haven't got the document in front of me, I think we have been paying a flat fee of $1,500, either $1,500 or $2,000 a year for the 2 local aircraft, and then paying per landing for any of our additional aircraft that come into the district.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your time.
We deliberate on the 4th of June, so we'll keep in touch.
Appreciate it. Look forward to hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, that comes to the end of the submissions of councillors. We turn to page 6. You'll see 4 recommendations there. The first one being that we received the full set of submissions. Second one, that we note that 31 submissions were received. Third one, that we note that 17 submitters were heard. And fourth, that we note that deliberations will take place on June the 4th. So very much housekeeping. Somebody prepared to move. Move. Councillor Holmes, seconded. Councillor Johnson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we now get to the point where we have our closing karakia.